Welcome to another episode of Talking Textiles. I'm your host, Tony Ehrbar, CEO of Renegade Plastics and American Tent. I also serve on the ATA Board of Directors. The goal of this podcast is to get to know the wide variety of positions and markets that make the advanced textile world turn. We'll be talking to professionals in different roles throughout this series to help inspire the next generation of textile professionals and anyone interested in learning about others' journeys in the world of textiles. ATA offers advanced textiles content throughout the year, including the upcoming Tent Expo 2025, taking place January 27th through the 29th at the Margarita Resort Orlando in Kissimmee, Florida. Visit textiles.org/events to learn more. Today, we're diving into how businesses in the textile industry are adapting to the evolving global dynamics of tariffs, supply chain risks, and the growing interest in reshoring and nearshoring. This is a part 2 of our conversation on tariffs, and we'll be looking at the current landscape and what has changed since the tariffs first went into place and how companies are navigating through the situation. I'm joined by 3 outstanding industry leaders who are living this every day. Brian Coughlin from Sioen, Victor Jensch from Ennis Fabrics, and Jonathan Palmer from Autometrix. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll let each of you introduce yourself, name, company, your role, and then a little bit about your company, and then tell us in one word or a short phrase that describes your business experience so far in 2025. So, Jonathan, why don't you lead us on?
All right, my name is Jonathan Palmer, second generation owner of Autometrix, and we manufacture cutting solutions for the textiles and composites industries. And that includes both the software to drive machines and manufacturing machines. So we're an equipment manufacturer within our industry based out of Northern California. And my one word to describe would be extra. That's been my experience this year. It's been extra.
Got it. Victor?
Hi, everybody. My name is Victor Jensch. I'm the Vice President of Operations and Market Development at Ennis Fabrics. Ennis Fabrics is a global distribution company. We have 4 central distribution centers in the world, 2 in Canada, which makes me a little bit different perhaps than the rest of the team here with a different perspective, 1 in Indianapolis and 1 in Ningbo, China. I think that pretty much covers it. You'd like to also know the industries we serve. And so we cover the furniture industry, industrial products, transportation, marine, RV. We cover contract, healthcare, and hospitality.
And what's your one word or phrase to describe the year 2025?
It would be as flexible as possible without making knee-jerk decisions and staying ahead proactively wherever possible.
We'll leave the knee-jerk decisions up to the government then.
Yes, we will. You got it.
Brian, good to see you.
Thank you very much. Brian Coughlin. I work for Sioen Industries, specifically for their coated textiles division. And Sioen as a whole has a whole vast variety of different companies that are textile focused and focusing on people that are out there working. So we have an apparel division that does a lot of workwear, whether it's protective wear, personal flotation devices, chainsaw protective wear for lumberjacks, and dry suits for people out working in the open. So a lot of different things, including our own chemicals division. So we are tied to the global markets for a lot of different raw materials, and we are just a textile manufacturing company focused on helping our customers succeed.
Okay. And your one word for 2025?
Time out. Take a breath and see what happens.
I like it. And then, as I said, I'm Tony Ehrbar, CEO of American Tent. Obviously, we make big party tents, and then Renegade Fabrics, which is a sustainable alternative to PVC and other fabrics. So it's lighter weight, performs really well, and it can be recycled at end of use. All right, so while we're getting to know each other, I'd love to hear just briefly, how's business been this year? Busy, weird, resilient? Let's take a quick pulse check.
I'll go first. Yeah, so I think business this year has been, it's kind of had some ups and downs, but overall, for at least for my group, it's been steady and has increased a little bit. So despite all the challenges, people still need fabrics out there, and in order to quantify it, it's amazing to see how there's still a need, and business continues to grow or adapt to be going.
Yeah. Victor?
I would say it's incredible how resilient we've had to be, but also our customers. And it's surprising this year that everybody wants to survive and everybody wants to make a profit, and they found ways to make it work. And so for us, it was just don't do anything too extreme. Work as hard as you can, maybe a little bit extra, like Jonathan was saying. And we've been successful looking after our customers. It's been a good year for us, despite the situation of the current global environment.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's involved extra conversations with vendors, extra conversations with customers, extra conversations with engineers, production, everything. But resilient is a good word for it. And I don't know if we all learned a lesson in COVID that we can survive more disruption than maybe we thought we could. But I find that it has changed throughout the year. When there's a lot of uncertainty, business doesn't do super well with uncertainty. We sell capital equipment, and so anybody's happy to push off a large capital equipment investment if they don't have to do it in a world of uncertainty. But the demand has stayed strong, the interest has stayed strong. Companies are trying to be successful and trying to grow. The one caveat I'll put to that is oftentimes people within I'll just say broader community assume that this must be like the best thing ever for me as a US manufacturer because it's all about US manufacturing. And it's not that simple. We know that because US manufacturing is made possible by a lot of imports. And so I would not say that business has gotten better based on this, or necessarily that there's been some resurgence of reshoring or people all wanting to open new factories. But I would say that business has been good and that companies want to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, as an American-made product, so we've seen our revenues actually up about 10% this year, but 90% of our materials American-made. Our aluminum has gone up 15%, our steel has gone up, and then our vinyl products have also gone up 13 to 15%. So while we're up 10% top line, we're up 15% cost-wise. And so profits are not where we want them to be, while the sales team feels like they're kicking butt, right? Getting a lot of product out. So before we jump into the discussion a little further, I wanted to give a quick recap of some of the major updates since our last podcast on this topic. First, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case challenging the legal foundation of certain presidential tariffs. And that case actually started yesterday, November 5th. I know, Jonathan, you went back to your hotel room last night and listened to the oral arguments. So
technically this morning.
Braver man than I.
Yeah.
So depending on that ruling, we could see major impacts, either overturned tariffs, refunds, or structural changes to trade authority. The US and EU have announced a new framework deal imposing fixed 15% tariffs on EU imports while loosening some restrictions on US exports, potentially shifting transatlantic sourcing strategies. Another major shift, and one that's broadly seen as a win for our industry, the de minimis exemption has been eliminated. This change closes a long-standing loophole that previously allowed many low-value textiles and apparel imports to bypass duties entirely. For domestic manufacturers, obviously, this helps level the playing field. And then finally, the Senate voted 51 to 47 to terminate the national emergency basis for many of the tariff orders under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is a very long word to say, marking a rare bipartisan signal that trade authority rules may have shifted soon. So, love to start with some questions for the room. Have any of these changes, whether de minimis, legal uncertainty, or supplier shifts, impacted your business or how you're planning for 2026?
We already started a strategy back in the Section 301 tariffs to actually spread our risk across multiple geographies. So we were ahead of the curve a little bit. For us, the impact, whether it's de minimis, doesn't affect us, but whether we have recoveries, whether we have extra tariffs, any uncertainty, we've tried being as flexible as we possibly can from a sourcing perspective, understanding that there are complexities in those alternate sources with slower logistics, slower supply, and we'll get into that a bit later, I'm sure. but we've tried being ahead by at least knowing the context, keeping our plan B vendors fresh, and always being ready for our customers. We've also stayed ahead by holding extra stocks to make sure that we wouldn't put any of our customers at risk.
Yeah, I think again, as the equipment supplier, I'm looking more at my customers when it comes to things like de minimis and whether or not that's having an impact. For most of our industrial customers, which I think are often represented here, that really doesn't have an effect. But there's a lot of interest and hope that that might have an effect on overall Sioen products manufacturing in the US, especially in the apparel world. And I think it's going to take time to really see whether that pans out because, yeah, we won't go into all those details. I think from the planning standpoint, what we're trying to do is, I think Brian said, take a breath and be patient, see where this goes. I am not wanting to get updates every single time a component goes up in price. That's just stressful. I don't need to know about it, but I do need to track overall where we're headed. And then sometimes we do have to just go back to our suppliers and say no to a price increase because just because you want to pass on all of that aluminum tariff to me, well, I don't want to pass it on to my customers. And so I'm going to take a chunk of it and my customer's going to take a chunk of it. And then what I really want is a supplier that's going to take a chunk of it. So not to become the most unpopular person on a panel of suppliers, but you guys know that that's a shared responsibility right now as we work through it. And so sometimes you just go back and you have that conversation, and it's made a world of difference in allowing me to see which suppliers are on a team with me versus which suppliers are taking my business for granted. So I think that's probably the biggest thing right now heading into 2026, drawing that line with suppliers and saying, like, I'm not taking every price increase you bring.
Well, so yes, price increases have been a very big part of our year, the past 12 months, not just tariffs, but also raw material prices. Things that our company has done is try to make sure that we have secured contracts for our supply of raw materials. And I think that is probably our biggest challenge, is making sure that we've got that guaranteed source of materials that we can use to make what we do for our customers. So the tariffs has been a very small part of our business overall compared to all the other challenges that we've had with raw materials in the past 12 months. More specifically related to the flame resistant ingredients that are used in our PVC coatings for like occupied tents, structures, and whether it's kids play material or whatever, it has to be, it's had a huge impact on our business.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, antimony, right, is the chemical we're talking about. It's primarily mined in China or by Chinese-owned mines around the world.
And refined in China. So they have about 80% of the refining capacity.
Right. So the price of that has gone up, I think, 600%, almost to like an embargo level.
Yes.
Yeah.
That has caused more headaches for me than anything else has. And then also, since we are importing materials from Europe, the exchange rate for the US dollar to the euro has gotten a little bit worse as well. So that's also had an effect, about equal with what the tariffs are.
Right. Okay. So let's jump into a little bit of flexibility in the face of shifting policy. So how do you guys build sourcing strategies when tariff policies can change overnight while still keeping your long-term goals in focus? I'm starting off with a big one.
At least my group here in North America, we have said, all right, well, we've got to be prepared. And we have essentially overstocked our warehouse to try to prepare for any other changes, try to beat whatever price increase may be coming. But as far as those, I think we may have hit the peak, could be on the downhill side of that.
You just jinxed this.
Just basing it off of the information that I've seen on the at least the antimony market, but hopefully we can see some things that go on with the dollar strengthening that will also put us in a better position for importing materials to North America.
Are you guys looking at alternative fire retardancy agents?
We are. We have a very heavy, intense R&D program that's going into looking at other additives that can be put into our compounds that will achieve the same flame resistant results as we've had with antimony. I don't want to jump the gun to say we have something, but I think there's some further testing they want to make sure before anything is actually released.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, I think Autometrix has over the years had a very US based supply chain, but there's still certain things that you simply can't get in the US because nobody makes them. And those tend to be electronics. So circuit boards, power supplies, even cables, and all of those are ultimately also based on metal prices. So when metal prices go up, copper prices have been super variable throughout the year, even without extra tariffs on steel and aluminum that are real specific, but a lot of copper comes out of Brazil. There's just this whole thing that's outside of our control, right? And I'm not going to go into business making my own power supplies and cables because that's not what I do well. So we look at what's possible. And, you know, the other day we found out that a power supply we've been buying for ages is actually made in India because all of a sudden that jumped by an extra 50%. And so then the challenge from a long-term planning perspective is it worth me taking engineering time to go find an alternate source to save that money, to design that in? Now I have a variant of a machine out there that I have to support. Do I need to find a new vendor to build that relationship with, or do you take a breath and wait it out and see how long that stays that expensive? So I think, you know, on the machine design side, we're just trying to ride this out as long as we can, see where things stabilize. I don't know how much opinion we're supposed to put in today's podcast, but I'll just say that my preference of a policy would be if you are looking at the world and seeing trade imbalances or unfair trade practices, or unfair is maybe already a loaded word there, but be a little more targeted with the policies that we have. Because if you leave an opening for me to buy things from Japan and from Germany and from Canada, that allows me to make decisions that I can have confidence in for the long term, that maybe still achieve some goals for America. But when everything can change all the time and everyone might be a target, that just means I'm going to wait it out because I'm not going to make a decision that might be meaningless in another week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, adding a different fire retardancy agent is, to your point, different than adding a new something into your machine.
Mhm.
You have to engineer in, it takes you time. Then you have to service a new part. And by that point, the numbers have probably changed, or the Supreme Court has ruled or whatever. So I totally get that. Anything to add, Victor?
Sure. From our side, I'd start with the second part of your question, and that's the long term. And I think because of all of the changes in tariffs, the long term, you talk about a 5-year strategy or a 10-year strategy, that's kind of set aside a little bit because you just really aiming at making sure you're staying healthy and your customer relationships and your vendor relationships stay healthy in the short and medium term. If we switch that over to the first part of your question, which is the sourcing, we have taken a different stocking philosophy approach. Not only are we sourcing in any case from multiple geographies, which include the US locally, so we have a diversification of about 50% US sourced and about 50% of our business is sourced globally in 16 countries. But we've made the decision understanding that these tariff changes are always implemented within 3 to 4 weeks. So we've stocked up where we've needed to on a forecasting system more in our Canadian central warehouses, which has allowed us to react very quickly to bring it in and beat the tariff deadlines for our customers, which has allowed us then to put less anxiety on our customers by giving them extra lead time on an increase, say 2 months, 3 months down the line. Those would be our sourcing changes that we've made.
Yeah, I missed the tariff window by 12 hours.
12 hours.
12 hours, which amounted to $40,000 additional dollars. And then I had a steel tariff that hit when it was on the ocean of 50% for the only part. It's a welded part we bring in from China. Most of the tariffs are when it gets on the ocean. This one just popped up in the middle of the night, 50%. Good luck paying that when it comes in. Yeah.
We were fortunate that we put in a cutoff always 3 or 4 days before the overseas deadlines, just in case you had that 24-hour delay. So we were lucky. We were at our deadlines we were trying to meet, we were able to meet.
Yeah, lead times are a real challenge for some of this because with equipment lead times, you're looking at anywhere from oftentimes 12 to 20 weeks delivered, depending on how complex the system is going to be for someone. So we oftentimes are talking to a customer and we cannot tell them what a tariff may or may not be on a piece of imported equipment. And we just had to get to that spot of saying, we don't know what this is going to be based on this. We think it's probably going to be between this and this, and help that customer get comfortable with that decision. So
Thank you for mentioning that, because I really feel like the customer relationship I know I've had a lot of hard and difficult conversations this year with customers that want to know, hey, well, what's my price going to be? And I say, well, we got to kind of take it day by day. So, but as long as a supplier is upfront and honest with the customer, that, that solidifies the relationship, and they have comfort knowing that you're not out there to really stick it to them when their order finally arrives, but knowing that you can maybe have some leeway and work with them and come to a solution and say, hey, look, this and this, and we both kind of take a little bit of a hit, but let's work together in the future as well. So that's really been a struggle this year, but I feel like it's strengthened a lot of customer relationships.
That's a good lead into my next question. So how are you guys approaching pricing strategy? Obviously, given the uncertainty on tariffs, shipping costs, supplier behaviors, and then how have you changed how often you review or adjust your pricing?
So how about I kick that off? We've broken it down into the cost and the sales side. The cost side, as the tariff gets implemented, we've waited to the point of having it seen in the Federal Register to make sure it's confirmed by CBP. And then within 24 hours, we were able to adjust our costs through a new system we put into our ERP, so immediate reactions. On the sales side, by front loading the stocks, and that's been mentioned by a number of us in this already, we were able to give the 60 days of extra lead time to our customers just to see perhaps the government is going to change their mind and it's no longer 100%, it's now 30% or it's 40%. Give them time to settle in and rather give a later increase. We've also on our pricing strategy tried to absorb as much of it as possible. So if it were a 30% increase in tariffs, we tried increasing by perhaps 20, doing exactly what you were mentioning. The vendor takes a little bit of the pie, we take a bit, we ask our customers to take a little bit. And we've had to, just out of respect for our customers, if they had a long-standing order in place, we've actually maintained that, and we've said we'll take the hit on that. We wouldn't apply that to our, even though we lost the margin, we gave that forward to the customer.
I've had a lot of lost margin this year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Anything to add, Jonathan?
I don't think there's anything majorly different. We just have to work through it. We have to, I would say like our sales pricing strategies have had to change some, where you used to look at what your raw material cost is, what your labor cost is, mark things up and make things happen. We're not going to take tariffs and then mark up tariffs, right? So we have to make sure that we're understanding why our prices are increasing and whether it's a temporary thing or not, and then decide how much of that we can absorb, what we push back on with the vendor, and what we communicate to the customer. And again, I think early this year, when everything started happening, we saw a lot of people hit the pause button on making decisions. We had people wanting us to delay shipments, especially if it was going into Canada. And we could even look at government registers and know that our stuff wasn't getting tariffed on the way into Canada, but everybody just said, hold on while we figure this out. People have gotten used to this now in a weird way. It didn't take that long for them to get used to it. And now it's just, all right, here's what's going to happen. And then we do our best to.
Again,
Jonathan's right. Sorry, Brian. I agree. So much of the sales pricing strategy was keeping everybody calm. The communication piece was so key. Many things changing, a lot of news going on. Some of the news not quite accurate, some of it accurate. Just keep everybody calm and try to maintain that we are there consistently with a stable back up to our customers.
Really prevented the TP crisis of 2020, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah.
I stocked up so heavy on toilet paper and masks. I still have boxes of like Lysol hand wipes sitting at home from that. So I got good at stockpiling.
Consider donating some of those to an elementary school.
I should consider. So, so my controller's the one who has to deal with all of this. I'll send in an email probably 3 times a week. I'm like, could you work up this pricing strategy? Can we look at like the contribution margin of this product to try to just, to your guys' point, you can kill it on revenue, but if your costs go up so much, it's really hard to maintain that margin. So kind of to that point as well, I don't know if it's similar for you guys, but normally when we do forecasting, we have maybe a base case and a low case. I think I have a low, a lower, a taco strategy. I got a high one. I got a middle one. So how do you guys think about forecasting?
Got a dartboard?
Yeah, I mean,
I have one back in my Airbnb.
I put a dartboard on the wall and I hope for the best. No, I'm super proud of the sales team that I have right now, and they've done a really good job navigating this with customers because, capital equipment purchases, they stretch over months. They're not made quickly, oftentimes over years. One of the benefits that we do have as an equipment manufacturer is we rarely have pricing agreements already in place. So we don't have to look at whether or not we're honoring existing pricing because we're able to update quotes kind of on a live schedule based on what we're experiencing. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is about relationships. So we're selling equipment into an industry that's going to use that for 15 to 20 years. And yes, is pricing sometimes uncertain? Absolutely. Do you still want to be in business? Do you want to be competitive next year? Do you want to be competitive in 10? Like, now's not the time to change your mind about how you wanted to invest in your company because of uncertainty, because whatever happens, I don't know any business people who are like, yeah, I'll probably just close the doors next year if it doesn't go my way. Like, I think, again, we all learned that in COVID. We can survive it. We're going to get it done. And so it's about building those relationships and then acting in a way that maintains those relationships. So I would say that I might be more cautious in some of my planning right now. Tony, I'm building a building right now, and I had to make the decision to move forward with that. And ultimately that comes from the confidence that I have a sales team that's building relationships that last, and that somebody's not all of a sudden going to change their entire business plans based on a slight price increase.
Well, I mean, you're so confident you actually built your own bathroom and shower into your office.
Well, we
right?
didn't have to share that with everyone, but yes.
I wasn't gonna
Dedication.
That was a conversation at industry night last night. Yeah.
It is going to be amazing.
Our forecasting it's based on a algorithmic system from Sage called SIA, and it's an AI-based forecasting system. We took the pressure off that because that forecasting system cannot take into account geopolitical changes. And so what we did was we stocked up early, like I mentioned, which allowed us to take the pressure off our forecasting to have to react immediately at a SKU level. We have 12,000 active SKUs. And so what it did was the pressure was off our purchases, a little bit more human decisions going on. And equally, though, at a high level, we said, as a business, we thought that things would quieten down by about 10%. We were correct for the first time. The early part of the tranche of the tariff hitting, there was a sudden dip, but things normalized out for us. And so we had to recorrect that at the high level and just focus in and do our jobs consistently. And we found that that really worked out. Similar to yourself, our sales team, fantastic. They were there with our customers all the time, face-to-faces, online. It's so important, the communications, because anxiety happens when there's no noise. And so you just give the information, say, we have a plan, we're going to be flexible, but we have a plan.
And so you're saying AI can't predict what Trump's going to do tomorrow?
You got it. Although Google will probably say it can, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
my
For
experience,
sure.
my experience is it can't.
It's definitely going to tell you it's a really good question
Yeah.
and praise you for asking the question and then give you something.
There's a good South Park episode about that.
Okay.
Brian, I mean, how does that forecasting tie in as a salesperson? Obviously, you have goals, you have quotas to hit. It's probably stressful to be a salesperson right now.
Yes, it is. A lot of, I guess a lot of kind of gut feeling goes into some of my forecasting and trying to plan. Some of my customers give large blanket orders ahead of time. So I have those things to plan out. But then what other safety factor am I planning into my inventory for those orders? So yes, it's a little bit of gut and a little bit of past history to draw on what my forecast is. So, and got to leave some room in there for some growth somehow, some way, and really working on those relationships pre, during, and post sale to make sure that those customers are taken care of.
How have lead times or product availability affected you guys as you think about maybe changing sourcing to other countries? Or have you thought about that?
I don't do a lot of the raw materials purchasing from other countries, so I'm maybe not the best one to ask. I do know that they do have multiple sources that they consider, and they have a whole purchasing team that is in charge of all that at our headquarters.
How about lead times for your end products for you selling them?
It sometimes is related to what the product is. So some of the things where I have to consider is how long is it going to take to weave up the base cloth that is then going to be coated. So if it's a specialty product, it can take 16 weeks for the item to be finished. Otherwise, for the most part, if it's a standard weave pattern, then I can have fabric within 6 weeks from shipping from Europe to the United States.
Anything to add, guys?
Yeah, I just think that just like we're talking about how we're trying to build relationships and keep relationships with our customers, we have to remember it's the same with our vendors. And so anytime I get the question sometimes for purchasing or wherever, like, well, this price just went up, let's just go find another one. It's like, well, I have a 15-year relationship buying that part from somebody, and could somebody else beat their price for a while? There's a good chance, but what are the unknowns on that side that I don't know about yet? And it doesn't matter if it's from within the US or from outside the US. Anytime you change suppliers, you're getting a surprise that you don't know about. It's just going to be a guarantee. So going back to the common theme here of just taking a breath, having the conversation and trying to figure that out, because even if you're whether you're chasing price or chasing lead time, there's going to be a surprise around the corner with somebody new. We've had a situation recently where a longtime vendor just, in my opinion, failed at some account management and left us in a spot where we had to increase our lead times. And increasing lead times on capital equipment at the end of the year sucks. That's just not what anybody wants to do. But
some tax write-offs you can take if you can get it by the end of the year.
Yeah, Section 179, everybody's favorite. So we just, you have more conversations. Does it make you look somewhere else and see what else could happen? Absolutely. But making knee-jerk decisions in the middle of this, like you said, we'll leave that for the government.
Sounds like a little bit of short-term pain may have a long-term comfort for you, and sticking with some of those vendors that may have their challenges, but you have confidence that they are consistent and will serve you well over a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I think back to your point, Jonathan, you gave a bit of a silver lining from COVID, right? We had a couple of years where we learned a lot of lessons about lead times and such. So, Victor, anything to add to that question?
We've been fortunate. Our lead times, if anything, have actually reduced, probably by about 10 days from our existing suppliers. And that was purely because, like you were saying, Jonathan, everybody put their orders on hold. We didn't. We said business continues, and we found there was an improvement. But there's a caveat to what I was saying, and those were the new vendors that we either regenerated. They were existing vendors that we had made dormant, that we were making active again. And there was distinctly a extended lead time in those starting troubles that you have when you start with a new program, not substituting, because substituting is almost impossible, but adding new products that are an alternative plan B might be able to fulfill the same application, but it's a different product. And we found those lead times were quite extended from the existing efficiencies we'd already built over the years from our normal vendors.
Okay. So let's talk about onshoring, nearshoring. Obviously, we've heard one of the stated goals of the tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So have you guys looked at onshoring? Is there some real investment you've thought about? I know, Jonathan, you're here. I'm here for American Tent, but for the others, have you guys thought about more of an onshoring strategy?
I always think about that. There are certain projects or contracts that I'm not able to supply because my materials are not made in the United States. So I'm constantly on the lookout for ways that my company could start to manufacture more of products that I represent here. But that's way above my pay grade.
So you're just the sales guy. You're always going to help.
I'm here to try to make as much business as I can and show you guys that it is a viable market and you build something here, please.
I mean, sales is always going to tell production to do more for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's always a constant struggle
You
between
know, you give them an inch and they want that mile. So
It doesn't really affect me onshoring because we're a distribution company. Where it does affect is when one of our US vendors comes through and asks, would there be extra demand if they were to put in new equipment? Not too many of those conversations. There have been a few. And the concern there has always been the longevity of these tariffs. If you invest in equipment and bring manufacturing local, you're talking 10, 20, 30 years that you need to have a consistent government tariff approach. I don't think anybody's confident of that going forward. I'd be very surprised if many companies were to onshore and invest in equipment.
Yeah. So my textile business, Renegade, we currently import from Korea. But we are looking to onshore. It's a product that will be really desired by the government. And we all know berry compliance is important. So we have an innovation lab we've set up in Denver. It's just like a 15-inch machine that allows us to do innovation with our products. We brought that piece of equipment in. It could only be manufactured in Korea because the big machine at our Korean supplier was also made in Korea. I got tariffed on that piece of machinery, which seems counterproductive. If you want us to onshore manufacturing, don't tariff me on the piece of equipment I'm using to get myself to manufacture in the United States.
that you can only get somewhere else.
That I can only get somewhere else. Yeah.
Which I think, I mean, a simple example in our industry is sewing machines. Outside of the Mero company, you don't have a lot of US made sewing machines. And so if you want somebody to increase their throughput in a sewn goods factory, first thing they got to do is buy sewing machines, and they all just got more expensive. So I think if I can just go full opinion here for a moment,
We can't stop you.
you really,
cannot
you
stop
can
Jonathan
push,
from
and I
doing
will just
Let him cook. Let him
topple off
cook.
the other end here. You know, like Victor's saying, this is an extremely long-term problem. We didn't get into a world where things aren't really made very much in America overnight. It took decades of policy. And so now we're in this situation where we have, you know, we're less than a year into this, and none of us really know what comes in 3 years and whether that policy stays, because right now it's an executive policy. It's not a congressional policy. So I think a lot of people are waiting to see, because the ROI on actually spooling up a factory is very long, and you need workforce development behind that factory, because all of us in this industry know that finding sewers can be a huge challenge. So it's not like you just get to say, look at that, I bought a cutting machine, I bought sewing machines, and now I'm in business and I'm ready for whatever onshoring project is coming my way, because you don't have people to staff that factory. So this is a long-term thing that we found ourselves in, and it's going to be whatever comes, whatever might change it is going to be a long-term strategy. And right now we have a very short-term strategy in place. And my final opinion on this is that we have not looked as a country at why people don't manufacture things here. We haven't said, why is it expensive to build things here? We've just said, let's make it more expensive to buy things from somewhere else. it's, I guess, a way to level the playing field, but it's not a very long-term way to level the playing field.
Right. The Adam Smith Division of Labor, and I mean, you can make something. We make tarps, and we make them in Vietnam because labor is less expensive for something that's very labor intensive. So I mean, it's hard to make some of those. I mean, it's impossible to make some of those commodity products here, just overnight or from cost perspective, anyways. So
Yeah.
So Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot for some equipment and automation questions. First off, do you have a summary for us of the oral arguments from the Supreme Court yesterday?
I do not have a summary. I will say that it didn't look positive for the tariff long-term outcome. I mean, there were a lot of pretty critical questions. I would say that none of the justices were really coming out the gate with questions that made me think that they were going to be super pro long-term executive tariff policy. Having said that, I think that our current administration has made clear that it's something they want to accomplish. What's happening in the Supreme Court is only looking at one implementation of tariffs. So I think that even if Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that, there's a lot of room for a lot of chaos to come out of that, as people just have to figure out what's the next version of tariffs that are still going to come in, because it's clear that that is a policy decision within our government right now.
I'll be interested to see if they get overturned. Will we get refunded money?
Oof.
You and I were talking about this last
Yeah,
night, and you're like, oh, your
nightmare.
customers are asking, or they're going to get a refund, but I don't have any faith that they're just going to give us our money back.
And how many layers does that have to go through, right? Because you're a metal consumer, so now you got to go find out where you bought your metal from. Well, they probably imported it through somebody, and so the layers of who paid the tariff and at what stage, I hope that we don't have to deal with that kind of chaos.
You guys want to place money on that? See,
I don't have any. We paid tariffs, Brian. We're out.
I'll bet on the Packers going to the Super Bowl, but I'm not betting on that. So automation, Jonathan, are you seeing more people interested in automation as they're thinking about onshoring, supply chain uncertainty, labor challenges?
I would not say there's been some fundamental shift. I wish there was. We have one customer in the furniture industry who clearly said they were buying new equipment because of 50% tariffs on upholstered furniture. And that's one customer this year who has said, I'm doing this because of tariff policy. Outside of that, I think a lot of America has already known for a very long time that if we want to be competitive with extremely low cost labor, then we have to make our laborers more productive. And the way to do that is with equipment and automation. So we have seen more of a adoption of understanding. There used to be this mindset of, if I can't keep this machine busy all the time, then I shouldn't buy it. I'm not big enough yet. And now people understand, I think, more quickly that your sewing machine's not busy all the time either. Your welder's not busy all the time either, but that doesn't mean that you're asking someone to hand stitch things day in and day out just so that they're busy all day. Like, you buy the appropriate tool, you get that thing in place, and then you have a way to make your labor the most productive that they can be, not in some sort of Scrooge way, but like they're not hurting their body, crawling around on the floor, cutting patterns out. They're being effective. They're enjoying their job. They're building stuff.
Before I got my Radium Autometrix machine, we were
Nice
using
plug, Tony.
we were using rulers and utility knives on the floor to cut out 3D structures. So that was 11 years ago, and that automation has helped out a lot. So
Tony, is the machine still running?
machine's still running. I think I've had one night of downtime, and they ship me the machine in whatever is faster than overnight shipping. So
And we've only charged him tariffs 4 times after the fact, and he didn't even notice. We just shoved those bills in with the rest of them.
yeah, somehow my
service fees.
my polycarbonate sheeting on the top has gone up 500%.
Yeah, here we are.
So Jonathan, are smaller operations getting more comfortable investing in automation, or is a lot of it still focused on larger players?
No, I think smaller operations have absolutely accepted it more. And some of that's just like a new technology scares people until they know someone personally who's also done it. If Brian brings out material that's got something other than antimony, everybody's gonna be like, I don't know, haven't heard, I don't know. And until they have a competitor or a friend who's like, man, this is the best thing ever, I love this material, and then they do it. So it's the same thing. You just hit this tipping point where people start to realize, oh, people that look like me have already done this. I'll make this decision too. It's safe.
Well, I mean, you're not the only one using the new FR agent, so I'm assuming antimony might come down in price, but everyone starts using the new stuff, and then you got a supply demand situation where then the cost of that one goes up, right?
Right, but then we would have an alternate that is viable and tested and is an equal.
Yep.
And if whichever one has the lower price, then I'd say we'd probably be able to pivot and use the other alternate source.
Yep.
So certainly our goal, at least my goal, is to set my customers up for as much success as they can have. So if I can keep my prices as low as possible, that lets them build in that much more profit when they turn around and sell it to their customer. So everybody is hopefully successful.
All right, guys. Any closing arguments, statements, opinions? I'll start with Jonathan.
I've already given my opinions. We need long-term policy. I think that, we do a lot of business on the composite side as well. And so we see a lot of stuff in the defense industry. I think there are very strong arguments for why America had better, I won't even just say America, Canada, the entire Western world had better figure out how to make stuff and make stuff fast and not be reliant on cheap labor and cheap materials that are coming out of specifically Asia. With that said, I don't think the policy that we're pursuing right now will actually achieve that long term.
What I would say, my opinion would be, if it is going to be tariffs, and that's a decision made by the government, make it with a level of consistency and balance that everybody can follow without rushing it and with less emotion. That way, we will have more certainty. We can think further ahead. We can deal with it. Whatever those fiscal policies are for the US, whether it's Canada, whether it's other countries that need to protect their own labor forces or their own population, I do believe there's a need for a balance of payments, especially for the US. And I can understand why Trump and his administration are trying to drive tariffs to build up and reduce our deficit in the US. However, the way that it's happening is creating so much uncertainty that it is more damaging in the end than it can be positive. My hope would be, as an opinion, that if this were to continue, let it settle down, let us run our businesses, let's build it in with a bit of strategy, less concern, and allow all of us to build our confidence levels up again, and then perhaps allow that US administration to hand something off to the next administration that they can follow some level of consistency. That would be my opinion.
Yeah, I am. So I think the least we could ask of government is having common sense. I don't think we've gotten it in this administration or other administrations, but if I could ask for common sense, that would be something I'd like to ask for. And then one other note. So right leading up to the elections, I had a shirt that said, "I'm a small business owner. Ask me how tariffs actually work." And so I would hope that people would understand, as the panel that's here and a lot of those in this industry understand, China's not paying for the tariff.
Mhm.
We're paying for the tariff. You're paying through the tariff through rising prices, right?
Yes.
Brian, we're going to leave it with you for the final opinion.
I don't like to be last, but okay. Yeah, certainly the short-term turmoil and things that we're all experiencing and having to react to, I just hope it doesn't last for that long. I really would like to have at least a stable time, like the last 15 years or so that I've been in this industry, that things don't change a whole lot very quickly, which is great for me. I like comfort, but all this change has brought about a little bit of uncertainty, and I just hope that there is some vision for it to stabilize so that we can all adapt
Yeah.
and be able to seek that level of comfort again.
Yeah. And I see a lot of nodding heads in our audience of 7 out here agreeing
A
with
lot more
us.
people back there, they're just not listening.
Right. They're not listening to us. I
He
can talk
works for
really
ATA.
loud.
He doesn't count.
Thank you, Rick, for the audio recording. So Victor, Jonathan, Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, you.
So
Thanks, Tony.
For those of you at home, thanks for joining us for this episode of ATA Talking Textiles. ATA is a nonprofit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. Learn more about the events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events. And thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tony.